So hey, for those of you who are totally addicted to Bloody Elbow live video coverage, we are doing a back-to-back Vivi. You just saw me wrapping up the UFC NOLA Vivisection for New Orleans and the soon-to-be sad, sad demise of Dan Henderson. And I'm joined here now to talk about World Series of Fighting 21, a not as talent-rich a card, but a card that at least promises a lot more fun in the main event than watching Dan Henderson get shit kicked. Um, I'm joined by Victor Rodriguez and Eddie Mercado. This is Eddie's first time on the Vivi. He's been clamoring for it, so I figured I got to give him a shot sooner or later.
Yes.
And we'll be talking about mostly the World Series of Fighting main card, a little World Series of Fighting business, things that have been going on with them for the past few months. Not the undercard at all. The only fight we were excited for on it was Mukai Romo. He's pulled out with an injury. That leaves a whole lot of nothing on this undercard. It's the kind of thing that if you are a hardcore die hard unfettered fight fan, you will watch it in the hopes of seeing something interesting, but we're not going to tell you what to watch because there's just nothing there. So first, welcome, Eddie.
Hey, it's great to be here. Appreciate it. I'm excited. I'm actually excited for this main card. When I first looked at it, I was like, you know, maybe I'll watch it. But actually looking at it, I think they're going to be exciting. I don't want to say competitive necessarily because I kind of think there's some mismatches, but I think we will get some highlights, for what that's worth.
Victor, thoughts?
First off, I want to welcome everybody to the affirmative action edition of the MMA Vivisection. And welcome our good little buddy Eddie around here. Yeah, no, I have to agree with that. Stylistically, this does seem on paper like it's going to be able to deliver a decent amount of television watching, and it may move things along in terms of the how the organization is doing things, even if only for Western Canada. But yeah, it's certainly one to pay attention to. So I'm definitely down for that.
So let's start off talking a little bit of old business. Big things that have been going on with World Series of Fighting lately aren't so much like, it's not so much the bad business press that they were getting a few months ago where it was just everybody was asking for their release and trying to get out. Seemed like kind of rats leaving a sinking ship. It's now more been, in and out fighters signing and leaving, and the World Series of Fighting continuing to sort of re-gear its talent acquisition, maybe getting away from some of the higher priced people they brought in, and focusing more on some developmental fighters. So they cut Melvin Guillard, they cut Jessica Aguilar, and they brought in a trio of Dagestanis. Let's see, whose names I'm now blanking on for God knows what reason. So help me
Uh,
out. Who are the
I have
fighters they
them.
brought in?
I have them here. We've got Vagad Vagabov,
Yep.
Magomed Magomedov. You read this, you think it's a joke. It's like, are you sure? Okay. And finally, a very, very highly touted prospect, Magomed Bibulatov. All of them are, actually, that's not correct. Vagabov is 15-0, Magomedov is 10-1, and Bibulatov is 9-0. Very, very interesting performances on the regional scene out in Eastern Europe. So we should be expecting some pretty decent action out of them as well.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on in the water over there in Dagestan, but those guys can fight. I don't know what it is. Just if I see they're from Dagestan, I'm gonna watch them fight. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, no, that of them, I mean, I don't know. I need to look a little closer at Bulatov, but I'm really excited about Magomed Magomedov. Honestly, I think he's one of the better featherweights out there in the world. He's really, well, now bantamweights out there in the world. He's really just a very good, consistent, kind of well-rounded fighter, top athletic talent. So I'm excited for him. And Vagabov he's a fun as shit. He'll probably go down to middleweight, but he's like hyper aggressive, just really pressuring, really fights angry. So he should be fun to watch too. Um, that's great. Aguilar, I think it's definitely what we continue to see and have seen forever with regional MMA is that it's really hard for them to support women's MMA other than a couple of feature fights here and there. So I'm really glad they're releasing her. I hope the UFC picks her up because there's just no sense in being in an organization as small as World Series of Fighting. And World Series of Fighting isn't that small, but still, like, there's no sense in being there if you're going to try and be a big name in women's MMA.
Hmm. Yeah, it's the strangest thing is, and I think this is something we've talked about as well, that Aguilar is the women's division. There's no real set or established. I mean, it was just basically here's Jessica Aguilar. We're going to bring in opponent X every couple of months, and eventually after a while, it doesn't seem like it was bearing any fruit for them. I don't think it was doing them any benefit in the ratings. You're probably paying her a certain amount. You're probably just going to cut your losses, let her walk, release her from her contract early, and she already wants to go to the UFC, and she's been quite vocal about that. I mean, it's a win-win for everybody, and it also helps with the goodwill that they've squandered after building fairly quickly. This is a very good move for all parties involved. So good on them.
Yeah, I gotta agree with that. Aguilar, I think she will be a great addition to the UFC. I think she brings something that they're kind of lacking in the strawweight division. So, you know,
Well, she's not a fun fighter to watch, but she thinks she's the best in the world, and that
that
is a
goes
great
far.
narrative. Like,
Yeah.
she's kind of like the women's Ben Askren. Like, fans
Hmm.
don't tend to line up to watch her perform, but she has that same cockiness about her where she's just like, I'm number one and you can't beat me, you got to prove it. And hopefully, I think that in itself could really liven up and be like a good force at 115 to have somebody that women are going to want to try and beat. Like, they're going to want to prove themselves that they can beat Jessica Aguilar.
Should
Yeah,
be
it
interesting. We'll
sounds
see.
reasonable.
That division could definitely use a little excitement, though.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And on the so the other fighter they cut was Melvin Guillard. He's kind of gone and immediately picked up by Bellator. Is there any chance that you think that, like, I mean, it's obvious he couldn't be with the World Series of Fighting anymore. That was just kind of poison in the water from the beginning. But do you think he does any better for Bellator, or are we just going to get like the next Rampage who is constantly unhappy with whatever contract he's in?
Uh,
Hmm.
man, I would like to say he's going to come out and just start throwing bombs and be the Melvin of old. But I think I just saw a report lately that said he was going through depression and, just not in a good mental place. And in the fight game, I mean, the mental aspect is so underrated. It's probably the biggest part. And if you're not there upstairs, it's not going to go well, especially in Bellator. I mean, I don't know. There's nowhere else for him to go, though. I mean, what do you do? If you're Melvin, where do you go from Bellator? If it doesn't work out there, I mean, it's pretty much either headlining regional scenes or
One FC, that'd be the only other place, is he'd have to
yeah,
go
or
overseas.
overseas. Yeah.
Maybe M1, do the Cody McKenzie.
You know what? They actually have those M1 medieval fights now. Maybe he can learn how to swing a sword and hold a shield and I don't know. Maybe I don't know, man. I wish
I
he
would
would.
love
I
to
do.
see shot for like fighters on the wrong end of their career decide to like start picking up a sword. Like, fuck it, I'm going into battle.
Especially like the
Yeah.
unentertaining ones for sure. Oh wow.
Yeah, I don't know where I don't know where they'd even go from here. I mean, he's obviously unhappy with his situation in World Series, but by that same token, he never made weight. Aside from his initial fight with Cavalcante, he wasn't as exciting as perhaps they might have expected him to be. And he's not a cheap date. These are guys that are going to command a certain amount of money or feel that they're due a certain amount of money due to their name recognition. And there's pros and cons to that. I can see his case, but unfortunately, the way that these events are structured, the way companies are structured, is they will sign a guy for what they believe they will be able to make off of their name and off of their performances. Now, Melvin's not as perhaps up there in that tier as he might think, especially with the sort of slide that he's been on lately, and the whole thing with missing weight, not presenting medicals. When you have someone who's shown himself to be that unreliable without even setting foot in the cage yet, you're not really getting that much leverage out of it. So I have to wonder if this is going to be one of those things. He says he's got more control now than ever with Bellator over his destiny, whatever the hell that means. And as Eddie just mentioned, the deal with depression. Now, it's not like he was necessarily diagnosed with it. Maybe he just recognized he was suffering some of the symptoms, and I respect that. If that's legitimately what happened, I have no reason to doubt him. And you always wish for the best. I hope none of this was induced through head trauma or anything like that. I guess just any time you're an athlete that's on a slide, these things are bound to take place. So I really more hope than anything that he gets himself together. And if, as Eddie mentioned, look, if his head's not in the game, you really got to start questioning where you start going from there. Other than ONE FC, yeah, I mean, M1 would actually be funny, if not for anything else, the fact that you're going to probably have a rehash of some clumsy Russian announcer unfamiliar with American culture going, yes, he looks just like Cisco, yes. There's no, I don't really see where else he can go from it. He's not going to fight on the regionals unless he's getting, I mean, he's not fighting for the regionals. I don't see him doing that. So he's probably going to be picking up that ONE FC and burning every single conceivable bridge with a smile on his face. So that's where he's at.
Yeah. So on that note, I think that's most of the World Series of Fighting news we wanted to cover, right? Was there any last business that they've been going through at the moment? I can't think of anything. No?
That's
No?
pretty
Okay.
much most of it, yes, as far as the big items, yeah.
So we have a shitty undercard we're skipping, and then just basically right into the main card. The main card is fun. I think it's like you get 2 showcase fights and then 2 competitive bouts that should be interesting. And I'm honestly I know everybody wants to see constantly competitive fights all the time. I'm a big fan of showcase fights. I like to see guys be able to just show off, especially regionally. Like, I don't need to see a top prospect getting beat up by some other top prospect. I want to see him showcase his skills a little, see what he can do out there. Which brings us to our first fight of the night: Hakeem Dawodu, Chucka Williams. This is a hell of a showcase for Hakeem Dawodu.
Yeah, this one's tough here, man. I feel bad, for this Chucka Willis dude. He seems to be doing well in the regional scene. He will strike with you, even though he is not polished really when it comes to his striking. He's kind of leaves his chin exposed and flails. I don't like to say flails, but But he will change levels though, and he will blast a double on you, and and I guess that really works when you are the athlete in the ring. But wow, he's got his hands full with this one. Hakeem Dawodu, man, this kid's young. I mean, he's so technical with his Muay Thai that man, it's gonna be a long, long day for Mr. Willis.
Well, he might spend most of that in the hospital. I don't know how.
Man. Yeah, I mean, Dawodu, his technique is so nice. Like the way he throws his punch combinations, he'll go to the body, liver shot, and then a low kick. He's really good at mixing it up, and he's really good at being patient. Like he'll wait for his opening, and when he sees it, he takes it. Man. Oh, another thing is his reflexes. He's really good at getting he moves his head just enough to get out of the way of the strike, but not so much to where he's off balance so he can return and counter, in enough time to get the job done. And he throws volume too, He doesn't just throw 1 or 2 strikes. He'll actually throw 3, 4 punch combos. And his elbows in his last fight, who did he fight? Tristan Johnson, he had him in a tie plum and then just started just spamming elbows and got a takedown doing it, and it was one of the most brutal things I've seen. And this kid is fun. This kid is fun to watch. I'm excited for this one.
So Vic, heap some praise on Willis here. Come on, turn the tide.
Here's what's gonna happen. All right, now I'm gonna get this out of the way right away. If you haven't seen this dude fight before, and if you think you might be watching this event but you're on the fence, put those doubts aside, make some time, watch the very first fight, because Hakeem Dawodu is must-watch television when it comes to violence. Let me tell you, this dude right here, everything that Eddie stated is pretty much on point. I mean, you got a guy who's got great takedown defense. He's a product of a very robust Western Canadian Muay Thai and kickboxing scene. His timing is exceptional, and his ability to move in and out and dictate the pace is excellent. Now, he will have a bit of a tall order with Chuka Willis, who's got, despite what his record may seem, now he's 4-0 as a pro, which, is the same as Dawodu. The problem is that he's got at least 20 amateur fights under his belt, and 8 of them have ended by submission. He's got a bit of an odd style as it relates to his striking and combining it with his grappling, and he does have a tendency to take these wild double leg shots from way outside. I mean, he's really telegraphing a lot of these attempts. But even though with that, he does have decent transitions from one point to the next in terms of his movement. His submission setups are also sneaky; they're pretty good, and his cardio has been decent, if anything. So I really heavily favor Dawodu, but I really think we're going to get much more of a fight out of this than some people might expect.
All right, yeah, I gotta say, I think it's going to be a short, violent end for Dawodu, but I'm still looking forward. Like, if Willis shows up and can be aggressive and tough, and that really live off that for a round, I will be excited to see it. And if Dawodu shows up and just MDKs him in round 1, that'll be a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
Next up, we got Michael Hill, Mark Drummond. Hill was kind of considered a promising rising prospect on the Canadian scene for a while, got on a season of Tough, didn't do too great, hit a couple of speed bumps, and then lost his last fight outside of the World Series of Fighting to, oh God, what's his name?
Bristol
Marunde, yeah, another Tough product, former UFC fighter, and is trying to rebound here against Mark Drummond. I think he will. This looks like a fight that Hill should win, but that said, I don't know necessarily not that much about Mark Drummond. I'm not a Mark Drummond expert.
Mark Drummond, Sweet Dreams is his nickname. Let's see. Honestly, I don't think he's athletic enough to compete at this level. He does have some good boxing. However, he does leave his chin really exposed. He stands really high up when he strikes, and that doesn't really allow for a lot of power. And it also leaves your chin right there to be taken. And I'm not saying Michael Hill's exactly the most technical of strikers, but he is significantly more athletic, and he will throw bombs, and he will throw a lot of bombs. He will get up. Hill does get off of his back. I will give him that. I've seen him, get up from very bad positions. What he does nice, though, is he's good at throwing volume when it comes to his dirty boxing. If he's in a clinch position with you, and he sees your face exposed, he will hit you 6 times in a row and force you to cover up. And they're not devastating strikes, they're not huge, but it's enough to make you adjust to it, But, he does lack polish, and he can be held against the cage, but I think his athleticism will carry him through this fight and probably get the finish.
Mm-hmm. Vic, thoughts?
Yeah, Drummond is a very durable guy, but he doesn't have the same as Eddie just mentioned. The athleticism is going to be a bigger factor, and also very concerning is that Drummond seems to have a tendency to, while he does remain competitive in his bouts, he seems to be, if you keep enough forward pressure on him, you may be able to cause him to make certain mistakes that'll end up costing him, as he's had in some rather ugly moments in some of his fights. It seems to lead to that sort of thing. He hasn't really beaten anyone very notable, although he has. This is, I believe, his 3rd fight with the World Series of Fighting, and he's lost 2 bouts by submission. Whereas Mike Hill, he had the recent loss to Bristol Maroon Day. He's also lost to Ryan Ford and Joel Powell. So he's beaten to a certain level of he's lost to a certain level of welterweight, but at the same time, he somehow does have some questionable reactions, and I'm not sure how he's going to do here. His wrestling seems far better, and after landing his takedowns, he seems to really be able to gain his confidence. So we could very well just see Hill keep him pressed up against the cage, or just be comfortable using top control or working from the top of half guard for about 3 rounds.
So odds on this fight are Hill's the favorite at minus 175 to minus 205, and the Dawadu fight, Dawadu is the favorite from minus 500 to minus 550.
I
So
agree
now we
with
got the
those.
co-main event, one of two title fights. The first one up is Smilino Rama versus Blagoy Ivanov. I believe this is Ivanov's first fight since leaving his Bellator contract, which I'm not really sure why. I think Bellator cut him, and I can't imagine why. But he's definitely one of the best heavyweights on the market to face Rama in World Series of Fighting for their title, I would say.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one. I'm also kind of torn. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to go down. The way I see it is, it's either going to be Ivanov, clinching and getting Rama against the cage and kind of holding him there until he can secure the takedown and possibly finish him if it does go to the ground. But I can also see him getting blitzed right out of the gate. Rama has really fast hands, and he's not afraid to use them. He's not gun shy at all, and he's confident in his power that he's going to put anybody to sleep. Um, the problem with that kind of confidence, though, is he doesn't really cover up the way I would like him to. He kind of leaves his chin out there and kind of just swings from the hip sometimes, and that's pretty dangerous. You can't really do that as you know rise to the top. Eventually you're going to get caught. Now the way Ivanov bull rushes people, he might run right into a couple straight punches, and that can completely change the way this goes down. Um, ah, I'm torn. I'm not sure exactly who I want to pick on this one. Ah,
Gotta pick somebody. These are the
man,
rules.
I'm gonna go ahead and pick Ivanov. I think that he's going to be able to get the clinch and hold him there, and eventually gas. I think he might gas Rom out, honestly. So I'm gonna pick Ivanov. Decision.
Vic,
All right, I can see that happening, but something that needs to be considered here. Smileno Rama is a guy who, and this is a testament to what Eddie was just mentioning in terms of his defensive lapses. His lone loss on his record is to the UFC's Anthony Hamilton in an MFC bout where he got the head kick from hell. I mean, he got slept. And I mean, it really is pretty disturbing to watch. But Rama's got thundering leg kicks. He's got just really heavy kicks to the body as well, and he's just got this very other world level strength where he's able to muscle his way out from the bottom of top control. He's able to muscle his way out of being pressed against the cage or the ropes, as most of his Canadian bouts seem to have been. Now you have a guy like Ivanov who very much for a guy who's a world sambo champion. I don't know. I seem to expect maybe for his grappling to be a little more technical. Um, this is his first bout since his loss to Volkov back in May of last year, and here's a guy he's had some. His opposition has not necessarily been, I guess, other than maybe a guy like Volkov, it hasn't been as high as you may think. He has had wins over guys like Zach Jensen, Rico Rodriguez, and Rich Hale, and ultimately LeVar Johnson. He's got a lot of power man move attempts. He's trying to go for things like the Kimuras, the Americanas. He has been able to catch some rear naked chokes, some guillotines. Apparently, the submission attempts that he'll go for don't require that much flash. They don't require a convoluted amount of setups. And he likes, getting that flurry of just trading and biting down on his mouthpiece and going toe to toe. So if he catches Rama with something, it's most likely going to be that. I don't see him being able to control him for too long. I don't think he's going to take him down very easily. And even if he does, it's going to be a while. So I'd have to favor Ivanov here. This bout could get ugly in a good way. It could very easily also turn somewhat ugly in a I don't really want to watch this anymore way. So that's pretty much what we can expect here.
So you're going with Ivanov too, right?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Well, I don't know. I'm kind of feeling Rama now. Like, part of me, I think I came in with Ivanov just because I like he's got that consistent sort of Eastern European style where he wings big, wide single shots that are well timed and powerful, even if they're ugly. And then he's good at getting in on the hips and just kind of clinging to you and dragging you to the mat and making the fight ugly and hard. But I don't know. I mean, it's just Emiliano Rama's hard for me to get a beat on just because I feel like he's been getting in shape in the cage. If that makes sense. Like a lot of heavyweights where it's just like we've seen him go from this kind of like totally out of shape, overweight looking sort of backyard brawling heavyweight to a guy that looks like he's actually putting on muscle, getting in shape, becoming a real physical heavyweight. And if he can successfully do that, if that's something, if that's a change that he continues to make, if that's progression he's continuing to make, then his ceiling could be quite a lot higher. It's just hard to say. I'm a little more. I don't know. I feel like I want to pick Rama. I might pick Rama just out of spite. He's the underdog from plus 115 to 130. Ivanov is the favorite, minus 150 to minus 155. I could see this, or minus 145 to minus 155. I could see this being the case where, like, the guy from the other organization who's supposed to have more skills comes in and is everybody expects him to win, and he just gets dropped by the champion in a very legitimizing turn. That seems to happen sometimes in MMA where you get a guy coming in from the outside, people are like, oh, he's going to be really dangerous in this new organization, and then he just gets blown out. So
it's like any UFC fighter that goes to the World Series of Fighting.
Yes, John Fitch syndrome, I like to call it. Something in the water suggests that to me, but at the same time, it could easily. Ivanov is the more well-rounded, more consistently skilled fighter out there, I'd have to say. He's the guy who's likely to win if it goes longer than a round.
Ivanov was bombing on Volkov. Like he was tagging him and hurting him. You know, like you were saying, his awkward punches, they're effective. It's almost like how Fedor used to throw his punches. They weren't exactly the most technical things, but if they landed, you have to either block them, get out of the way, or they're going to hurt you.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing you see with Khabib, or with Khabib Nurmagomedov. It's that same thing. It's very much like the Dagestani Eastern European staple of just like these big, wide, leaping shots that they throw that are technically look like a mess, but they're so well timed and done with such accuracy and power that you have to respond to them. Like you have to respect them. So Ivanov really definitely has that. He should probably be the favorite, but I'm feeling Emiliano Rama, whatever my reasons. I don't know. That gives us our main event title fight, a featherweight fight for champion Lance Palmer taking on Chris Horodecki. Vic, start me out here. Make a case for Chris Horodecki to get the win here over Lance Palmer.
All right. Let's climb uphill then. Horodecki, who is, I will say this, he has been training at TriStar. He has been doing some work there, and he has looked somewhat sharper in terms of his timing, in terms of his, what he chooses to do, what kind of strikes he chooses to come out with. His takedown defense is serviceable. His submission game off his back, he's at least threatening. He's had some wins again over a certain caliber of opponent, but then he just doesn't seem to be able to get over that hump. His only losses have been to guys like Anthony Njokuani, Donald Cerrone, Mike Richmond, and Marlon Sandro, which is, losing to those guys, no shame in that whatsoever. I just don't know how really he's supposed to be able to beat Palmer since he's not going to be able to keep it standing for very long. That's really his largest advantage, unless he's able to get some sort of wizardry from under and be able to either sweep and work submissions. I mean, if he's just going to play the game of like, well, if he takes me down, I'm just getting back up, it's not going to be enough. Palmer's cardio is going to be, it's been shown so far to be pretty decent. His top control is his entire game. Once he grabs you, he gets on top of you, it's pretty much everything is just setting up to eventually a submission or just wearing the guy out. So Horodecki does have a shot. I'm not totally going to count him out. I'm not sure if he should be favored in any significant way at all. But, I mean, look, if the money seems attractive and you want to put something down on the guy, throw a couple of shekels in there. Hey, knock yourself out. I certainly do think that he's going to have a tough time doing it.
Okay, that was not the ringing endorsement I was looking for, Eddie. Are you gonna pick up the mantle and try and?
God, what do you want?
I will try. Okay. All right. So Horodecki, definitely has reached the ceiling. You know, he's definitely not getting any better. In fact, he's probably only going to get worse from here on out.
He's not starting strong.
I think that's fair to say. Let's get that out of the way. Let's talk about what he does well. Outside of his striking, he has a really good striking game. I like his, the techniques he uses. He starts really strong in a real athletic stance that, you know, you have to account for what's coming at you. That might dwindle as the rounds go on. He gets a little bit slower and slower. So his cardio has been a little bit of a question as of late. But he's really good at obtaining the clinch and holding you there and getting off some nice grinding strikes. Nothing significant, but, you know, knees to the thigh, you know, things to soften you up and frustrate you. The only problem with that is you're not closing the distance on Lance Palmer. That's doing him a favor. Man, Palmer's a stud, you know, 4-time All-American at Ohio State. When he first showed up, I was a little skeptical because his striking was so just one-off. You know, he would throw one power shot at a time. You know, he wouldn't move his head. He just kind of looked awkward the way he would close distances with his range. But his last fight, he was out there throwing combos, like crisp 1-2s. Man, he's looking sharp when it comes to his stand-up. And I mean, and that's not his bread and butter, but you know, he throws these really technical, powerful strikes now, and you know, they're doing a really good job with him at Alpha Male. And he's tough, man. He's a tough out for anybody. It's scary. I honestly don't see Horodecki surviving 5 rounds with him.
All right. So to that note, Horodecki is the underdog to plus 415 to 484. Lance Palmer's favorite, minus 650 to minus 700, and minus 641 to minus 700. There's not a lot of money coming in on Horodecki there. But thank you guys for giving it the.
I tried. I gave it the old college try. Man.
I know I asked a lot, but you know what? It was an easy fight to call. Palmer's probably gonna walk through him, and we gotta make it. We gotta liven it up somehow. It can't just be saying that. On that note, I mean that's why. So you know, at the end, the main card of this World Series of Fighting event is not a bad card. Something to watch. You get a couple of champions, one of which, Emiliano Rama's got a real challenge in front of him. Hopefully we see Palmer really show off. It'd be fun to just watch him blow the doors off Horodecki. And then, you know, a really hot developing talent in Hakeem Dawodu, and somebody, you know, who's potentially like I think that World Series of Fighting has a little bit of a stake in building up in Michael Hill, who could be, you know, a decent like UFC caliber fighter at some point in his career if he can really get everything to click properly, and World Series of Fighting seems to be giving him that chance. So there's something to watch on this card tomorrow night, enough to keep it interesting. Now, I think, you know, that's pretty much everything we had to say, so I'm going to close the show here. You can follow me on Twitter at DZaneSimon. Eddie, your Twitter? Do you have a Twitter handle?
You can follow me at the Eddie Mercado, and give us a like on YouTube and subscribe.
Hey, there's looking out. Yes, give us a like. That's the thumbs up thing. That helps, believe it or not. You can find Vic on Twitter at Vic M. Rodriguez, or,
Yes, you can.
trolling the Bloody Elbow comments, looking for trolls.
Mm,
Yes, Rep Bloody Elbow.
mm.
And we'll be back for 6 round shit, knuckle up, all sorts of other video coverage. We got a whole another set of fights next week. There's a Bellator event coming up, so I might call you guys up for that. Thanks again for joining me, and until next time.